Have you ever felt tired, but not the kind you can sleep off? The kind of tired that comes from pretending to be okay for too long. No chaos, no tragedy, just an invisible weight that won't go away. You get through the day, you say the right things, you smile when they ask, but inside, something's gone quiet. If no one ever told you this before, I will now. You are not lazy. You are not broken. You're carrying pain that has no name. And this video is where we start, giving it one. You wake up, you function, and you show up where you're supposed to, but something feels heavy, and you can't name it. There's no headline for it, no diagnosis, no visible scar, just a weight, dragging behind your eyes, living in your chest, filling every moment of silence. It's not that your life is falling apart, it's that you're carrying too much of it inside, alone, and no one sees that, because men like you don't collapse publicly. You endure, you perform, you minimize, until the day comes when even breathing feels like work. This is the weight you can't explain, because it's not one thing, it's everything. Everything you never said, everything you're afraid to feel, everything you pushed aside just to keep going. But here's the truth. What you bury doesn't die, it just waits, and it grows heavier until you finally stop running and decide to face it. There's a kind of pain that doesn't scream, it doesn't burn, it doesn't bleed, it just disappears, and in its place comes a silence. At first it feels like relief, like maybe finally you've made peace. But it's not peace. It's numbness. You still go to work. You still answer messages. You still remember to eat. You even smile because it's easier than explaining why you're not. But inside, there's nothing moving. Joy feels like a memory. Desire feels like a chore. And hope feels like a word you once believed in, but no longer understand. You're not falling apart. You're just not feeling anything, and no one sees it. Because men who go numb rarely look broken. They look responsible, stable, put together. But numbness is not strength, it's a survival mechanism. It's what happens when pain has no place to go. So your body, your mind starts shutting the lights off, one by one. Emotion, curiosity, faith, connection gone, until all that's left is routine and the quiet fear that maybe this is all life will ever be, but it's not. And you know that. That's why you're here. You keep moving, you stay busy, you keep the calendar full, because the moment you slow down, the truth catches up. So you run, not to somewhere, but away. From the guilt you never voiced, from the sadness you never named, from the fear of becoming someone you no longer recognize. You say you're focused, driven, productive, but what you really are is tired of being haunted. Haunted by memories you pretend don't matter, by words you should have said, by versions of yourself you keep trying to forget. And here's the brutal truth. You can't outrun what you haven't faced. You can't bury what still breathes inside you. Pain isn't polite. It waits, it adapts. And eventually, as it finds a way to speak, through your silence, your mood, your exhaustion, that tension in your chest, that fog in your mind, that fire in your stomach that won't go out. It's not random. It's the echo of something unprocessed, unhealed. You think you're tired because you're doing too much. But maybe you're tired because you've been running from yourself. You're doing everything right. You show up, you deliver, you answer calls, pay bills, meet deadlines. You even laugh at the right moments. You say, "I'm good," so often it almost sounds believable. But deep down, you know it's a performance, a well-rehearsed script, a mask you've worn so long. You forgot what your real face looks like. They say you're reliable, strong, grounded, and maybe you are. But no one asks what it's costing you, because functioning doesn't mean you're okay. It just means you're skilled at hiding it, at pushing pain to the corners of your life where no one looks. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." But the problem is, when you never show the world your reality, your imagination becomes your prison. You start living not in truth, but in performance, not in strength, but in denial. You've become so good at surviving that healing feels unfamiliar, so good at holding it together that falling apart seems selfish. But listen to me, you don't get stronger by ignoring the fracture. You get stronger by looking at it, by accepting that being fine isn't the same as being free. You're not here to perform, you're here to be whole, even if that means unlearning everything you thought made you dependable, especially that. Not all breakdowns look like chaos. Some look like routine. Some look like a man who always shows up, but hasn't felt present in years. Men don't always fall apart loudly. Most of the time, they break in silence, not because they don't feel, but because they were taught not to show it, not to trust it, not to name it, so they disconnect, bit by bit, emotion by emotion, until all that's left is function without feeling. Epictetus wrote, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." But what if no one ever taught you how to react? What if all you learned was how to suppress, to distract, to endure? That's not strength, that's survival. And survival is not enough for a full life. Not for a man who still has years to live. Not for a man who still has truth to speak. You don't need to explode. You don't need to collapse. But you do need to stop pretending that silence is the same as stability. There's a quiet place where healing begins. But it's not where you break in secret. It's where you finally admit that you're breaking. You start to believe something's wrong with you, that you're weak, unmotivated, not enough, because no one else seems this tired, this disconnected, this hollow. But let me say this clearly. This isn't weakness. It's overload. You're not breaking because you're fragile. You're breaking because you've carried too much for too long, without rest, without help, without silence. You're exhausted, not from laziness, but from holding up the world, without anyone noticing. And in your mind, you punish yourself for not being more driven, more grateful, more together. But even Marco Aurelius, a warrior, an emperor, a philosopher, wrote this in his journal. If you are tired by the weight of the world, remember, you are not Atlas. It is not yours to carry alone. He knew. He lived through plagues, war, betrayal, and still he reminded himself, strength isn't about doing it all. It's about knowing what's truly yours to carry. and letting go of what isn't. You don't need to push harder. You need to pause deeper. This exhaustion isn't failure, it's a signal, a truth that you're done surviving like this and ready to start living differently. You were never taught how to suffer well. You were taught how to succeed, how to grind, how to hide your cracks. But no one showed you how to lose with dignity, how to feel without collapsing, how to walk through chaos and stay still inside. That's where the Stoics lived, not in ivory towers or quiet monasteries, but in battlefields, plagues, betrayals, and grief. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, but wrote every night like a man trying not to lose himself. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Seneca buried his son, lost his fortune, faced death with calm eyes. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. Epictetus was a slave, beaten, stripped of freedom, and still wrote about inner liberty like a king. No man is free who is not master of himself. This isn't philosophy, it's survival. It's how men like you, who carry storms in silence, learn to breathe again. They spoke not to impress, but to endure. And what they left behind might be exactly what you've needed all along. You've been taught that motion is progress, that the busier you are, the better you're doing. But what if movement has become your escape? What if the rush is your way of avoiding yourself? Stillness feels like failure when you're addicted to proving something, when the silence gets too loud, when you don't know who you are without the doing. But real healing doesn't happen in speed. It happens in stillness, when the noise fades and the ache becomes clear. When you stop running and finally ask, what's actually mine to carry? And what can I put down? Marcus Aurelius once wrote, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. He wasn't talking about meditation. He was talking about self-mastery, about learning to govern your inner world in a life that constantly tries to take it from you. Stillness isn't laziness, it's discipline, it's presence, it's the ground where self-respect grows again. When the world spins out, when you lose what defined you, when exhaustion becomes your default, stillness is not retreat, it's return. Return to breath, return to clarity, return to yourself. Loss changes you, not just the moment it happens, but in all the quiet moments after. It rewrites your routines, steals your certainty, and leaves you staring into the space where something used to be, a job, a relationship, a dream, a version of yourself you worked years to build, gone, and what's left is a question you don't know how to answer. Who am I now that I'm no longer that? It's easy to believe the loss defines you, to carry it like a scar that whispers, you failed, you weren't enough, you should have held on tighter. But here's what the Stoics understood. What you lose is never who you are. It's what life gave you to hold for a time, not to become. Seneca reminds us, never say that I have lost anything. Say only that I have given it back. You are not what left. You are not what changed. You are not the silence that followed. You are what remains. what gets up again, what chooses to keep breathing with dignity, even when everything around you has forgotten how. Strength isn't found in loud moments. It's built in silence, not in the applause, but in the choices no one sees. It's the decision to get up when you're still tired, to speak gently when you're angry, to keep your word when it costs you something. You don't need to be loud to be powerful. You don't need to dominate to feel whole. You need to become the kind of man who can sit with pain without flinching, who can lose without losing himself, who doesn't shatter just because the world cracked around him. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And mastery doesn't look like control. It looks like clarity, knowing what you feel but choosing how you respond, knowing what hurts but choosing not to pass that pain forward. This kind of man isn't celebrated in public, but he's unshakable in private, and that's the kind of strength the world doesn't teach you, but life demands of you. You've spent too much time trying to explain your pain, justifying your exhaustion, making sure people know you're doing your best. But here's the truth. They'll never fully understand because they're not inside your head. They don't carry what you carry, and that's okay. You don't need a committee to approve your healing. You don't need permission to begin again. There comes a moment when the explaining has to stop, not out of pride, but out of clarity. You're not here to be understood. You're here to become whole, quietly, deliberately, fully. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. So stop waiting for someone to see you. Stop begging to be known. Start building with your own hands, with your own choices, with your own silence." You may not recognize yourself right now, not after everything you've lost, not after everything you've buried, but that doesn't mean you're broken. It means something inside you refused to keep pretending. Something finally cracked and let the truth in. You're not falling apart. You're falling through what no longer serves you. The mask, the pressure, the roles you thought you had to play just to be worthy. You're not weak for feeling this. You're awake. And awakening doesn't feel like victory. It feels like dying to who you were. But that's what becoming is. It's a shedding, a silent burning, a painful clarity that says, I can't keep living like this, and I won't. This is not the end. This is the fire before the foundation, the silence before the rebuild, the moment before you finally walk forward, not as a version of someone you were told to be, but as a man you chose to become. You made it here, not because you had the answers, but because something in you refused to stay numb. You listened, not just to me, but to the voice you've been silencing for years. And now, you know, you're not alone. You're not weak. And this moment, this quiet breaking, is not your end. It's your threshold. So take the next step, not for anyone else, not to prove anything, just to honor what's still alive in you. If this spoke to you, not just to your mind, but to your soul, subscribe not to follow me, but to walk with others who are tired of pretending and ready to become. Because when you're ready to rebuild, not to perform, but to become, everything changes. Not all at once, not loudly but fully, and when it does, you'll remember this silence as the moment you finally came home to yourself.